Hi, my name is Adam Mazuz, a cloud solution engineer here working at Pure Storage.
Hello there, my name is Kyle Grossmiller. I am also a cloud solutions engineer at Pure Storage.
In this video today, we will walk you through how you can set up disaster recovery mobility between Cloud Block Store and Azure VMware solutions inside of Azure with different replication methodologies and technologies. If you're running your workloads on top of Azure VMware solutions and you're extending your storage by providing that from Cloud Block Store, there's a couple of ways you can enable disaster recovery to a different setup that you have Azure VMware solution running that can be in the same region or different regions. So there's going to be two use cases here. Same region and different region that they can be in the same continent or in different part of the world. So Kyle, why don't you start with the same region?
You bet, Adam. Thank you. So when we're talking about deploying Azure VMware solution and Cloud Block Store within the same region, we have a couple of different options here. So if we start, let's just say, for example, let me get a different pen. If we start, for example, with an AVS deployment that's deployed in AZ1, and let's just say, for example, we have a Cloud Block Store instance that's also deployed in AZ1. One of the things that we can do is we can deploy Cloud Block Store into AZ2. And that actually opens up quite a few possibilities for us just for the single AVS instance. One option, so let's assume these are connected. One option could be to set up active cluster between these two Cloud Block Store instances. And what that's going to do is actually transparently present a volume up to Azure VMware solution. So what that means is that when a virtual machine in AVS makes a write or a read, that write is acknowledged across both CBS instances prior to that write being acknowledged back to that VM host. And that's really important, right? Because if, for example, this CBS instance were to go offline, this other one will be able to transparently take over, right, in the event of a failover event. Another situation that may come up is perhaps I have two separate unique AVS instances running in AZ1 and AZ2. Now, in this instance, right, basically all of our different replication options that Cloud Block Store offers become available to us. In addition to potentially using active cluster, I could instead set up async replication between these two Cloud Block Store instances or active DR. The biggest difference between the two is that active DR continually replicates snapshots, whereas async replication enables me to set up those snapshots on some sort of schedule, right? But what's really nice about this type of solution, and let's just assume for argument's sake, this CBS is now back online. Now I've got my data located across multiple AZs, and I've got data mobility to be able to restore and bring that data back up for either AVS instance across AZs, or just move it around if I want to do some workload balancing, et cetera, right? I've got a myriad of options out there now without even needing to connect my two AVS instances together, which you can also do. But there's a lot of flexibility here in terms of disaster recovery solutions for AVS and Cloud Block Store together. Final option, which I'll touch on here, is perhaps I've got data asynchronously replicating between these two CBS instances. I can also use CloudSnap to replicate this data out to Azure Blob Storage. And that could potentially be same region, different region, anywhere around the globe. Adam will touch on this in a minute here, but just as another option, right? Within the same Azure region, I also have that ability to replicate to Blob, perhaps for like cold DR. Maybe I've got an SLA that requires that I keep a snapshot a month or a snapshot a week for 5 years. Blob storage is a great low-cost solution to offload that backup data from Cloud Block Store onto Blob storage. With that, we'll now take a moment and transition to Adam to talk about other regions within Azure.
Thanks, Kyle. So let me start by taking over from that blob that you sent your snapshots to. So there's two ways if a customer wants to protect their production environment into a different region, since the other region is going to be a disaster recovery target. they can do that with a cold DR or a warm DR scenarios. If they want to keep by the cold DR means that they are tolerant to wait for longer times to recover their data, they can send their offloading their snapshots to that blob in the same region or a different region. So let's think about that blob is already on that region too that we draw here. So once you want to rehydrate that data back to another CPS, let me use the same pen. So you can just go and deploy CPS in that particular region, and then you just need to rehydrate your snapshots here. And then you just kind of clone them instantaneously, and then you can present them to your AVS, which can be done later on while you're deploying your CPS, or you can do that on a warm DR scenarios where you have your setup has already been there and your CPS is running. So you can even use active DR or a sync replication in a similar fashion to get your data stores snapshots sent all the way to the region where your CPS is running. That can be active DR or a sync if you have lower SLAs that you have to meet for your business.
Yeah, I think just one to close with and to think about, right, is that ingress and egress charges in the public cloud can cause considerable expense. And I think another really unique advantage that we're able to offer with this joint solution is that when you're using active DR or asynchronous replication, we're basically going to initially copy that volume over or a set of volumes over to your target site. But then after that, it's just deltas, right? It's only the data that changes that is then transmitted from there on out. And all these snapshots as well are space efficient, they're compressed, and they're encrypted. So you're actually saving money through that as well, just via our built-in data reduction. That also extends to our replication technologies as well. So just another thing, something else to think about, right? The cloud's a very busy place. There's a lot going on. So I think, as you're building up, for lack of a better term, these virtual data centers in the public cloud, there's just one consideration to think about to help cut costs and help also come up with a great, robust disaster recovery solution.
One thing I'm going to add here, based on what you said, Kyle, since our both CPSs are aware of what data they're sent, so we don't send the same byte twice. So this is what leads to a better cost optimization when you send your data back and forth, making sure that you're using the lowest bandwidth that's available to you, using any technologies for connecting both regions or availability zones together, making your workload performing in their best fashion.
Thanks again for checking out our video. There's a lot more content out there coming on Azure VMware Solution and Cloud Block Store. We'll see you soon.
Stay tuned.